Well, hello, I'm Greg. This is Supposedly Fun. I am here today because I realized I did not talk about a book that I read back in June. So I figured I would correct that by doing it today. The book is The Paying Guests by Sarah Waters. When I did my LGBTQ reading list back in June, I had completely forgotten to include any of her books. So in order to atone for it, I managed to get an audiobook of The Paying Guests available on Libby, which is my library app, and I listened to it on audio. As I said, I had never listened to one of her books before, which feels like a kind of shocking omission. She is a popular author. She is an LGBTQ author, and, just kind of a blind spot that I wanted to fix. So, if you are unfamiliar with The Paying Guests, the premise of it is that Frances Ray and her mother have to start taking in lodgers in their home in 1922 following World War I. After their father died, they found out that they had a lot of debts. He hadn't managed their money well. So in order to maintain the house where they lived, they need to compromise their situation and take in these lodgers. The lodgers are Lillian and Leonard Barber. They are of the fairly new at the time clerk class, and as they get settled in, things happen. As things tend to happen in books. Imagine a book where things didn't happen. So I'm not really going to do spoilers here, but as Lillian and Leonard get settled in, Lillian and Frances develop a bit of a flirtation. They eventually begin an affair. In that first half of the book, things move pretty slowly. A lot of the first half of the book depends on Sarah Waters' writing, which is great, and how much you like the characters, because what she's doing is she is really spending a lot of time introducing you to the characters, doing a lot of groundwork for the stuff that's going to happen in the second half of the book, because halfway through, the book takes a very sharp left-hand turn into being a fairly standard crime thriller, complete with a police investigation, a murder, and a criminal trial, not necessarily in that order, obviously. And I think how you react to that twist really depends on how you respond to everything that happened in the first half of the book. For me, I actually enjoyed it, but I don't actually know how much of my enjoyment has to do with the book itself and how much of it has to do with Juliet Stevenson, who reads the hell out of the audiobook. She is so good. She doesn't just read this book, she performs it. But then again, part of me wonders how much of my enjoyment of the book depended on her, because I even wonder, sometimes she would read a line as if the character is in pain, and then I think to myself, well, if I had just been reading this, would I have read it as this person is in pain, or would I have thought that they were angry? There are so many different ways of responding to text on a page. I wonder how much of my experience was colored by the way she read it. And of course, if I go back now and read the book, I'm still going to have the memory of how she read it in my head, so there's really no knowing. But I will say, I am absolutely going to seek out more audiobooks that are performed by Juliet Stevenson, because she is really good. I can see where some people would still say that the first half of the book is painfully slow. I was just mesmerized by what Juliet Stevenson was doing, so I kind of floated along, willing to go wherever she was going to take me. And I will say that even though the first half of the book really depends on the character work that Sarah Waters is doing, I do think some characters don't actually have a lot of depth to them, which is kind of disappointing. Basically, all of the character work is being done on Frances. Her mother remains pretty much a cipher, not dimensional at all. Leonard really only has one dimension as well, and Lillian, I just never felt like I understood her in the first half of the book. I thought that twist in the second half, where it goes into crime thriller territory, actually did a lot to make Lillian more interesting. It's unfortunate then that the thriller part, again, I don't really want to get into spoilers, but it seems like things have the potential to spin out of control. There's potential for a lot of different things to happen. The book could go a lot of different ways. There could be a lot of twists. There could be a lot of turns. And there just aren't in the end. And I think any one of those twists could have made a much more interesting book. I liked it. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it a lot. But especially since I guess that's part of the thing of me doing a review now compared to what I would have done then. If you had talked to me about this book back at the end of June or in the beginning of July, I would have said, "Oh, I loved it. Yeah, it's got flaws, but I really loved it." But now that I've had some distance from it and I think about it a little bit, the flaws really stand out a lot more to me, and it's funny how that happens. And again, because I don't want to go into spoilers, but I think that when it gets into the trial, it seems like there's potential for Lillian to actually be an extremely manipulative person. There's potential for her to be a bad person in twists there, but it doesn't really build to anything. So at the end of the book, you still really don't know what to make of this person. You don't really know what she thinks, what she feels, because her defining aspect in the first half of the book is that somebody says that she only wants to be loved, and that is her motivating factor. So, but that's the most interesting thing about her as well. And I feel like I kept trying to put things on her to make her interesting. And I feel like Juliet Stevenson tried to imply a lot of those things in order to make her more interesting, and it just kind of wasn't. So here's what I found out after I finished The Paying Guests. I looked online and I found out that of people who have read Sarah Waters, this seems to be consensus her least popular book. So I also wonder, if I had read a book by Sarah Waters before, would I have been so forgiving of this book? Would I have enjoyed it as much as I did as I was listening to it? Or would I have been disappointed by this book, as so many of her regular readers seem to have been? So I think this seems to be a good book for someone who has not read Sarah Waters before. Maybe not so much if you have read her before, but even if you have not read her before, part of me feels like maybe I should have jumped into one of her more popular books, like Fingersmith or Tipping the Velvet, like one of those, and tried one of them, because I do have issues with this book. I did really like the writing. I did really like the portrayal of Frances. I thought Frances was a very interesting character, and I thought that a lot of the stuff about World War I was interesting. You know, there are so many books about World War II, and there are not as many about World War I. So this point in time as the setting was very interesting. I really liked a lot of the details and the ways in which society is reeling from the things that happened and the traumas of World War I, and feels how society feels like it's in a very new place, and the emergence of the clerk class, and how different money and the economy is, and social mobility. I feel like there are a lot of interesting things happening around this book, but I also think that the reader takes the context of what they know about the period and kind of applies them to the book more so than Sarah Waters is actually saying anything intelligent about them. And I don't know how I feel about that either. So I definitely want to read more Sarah Waters. Do I recommend this book? I recommend the audiobook for sure. Juliet Stevens reads the hell out of it. Again, and I'm definitely going to listen to more books that she has done. I will say I might have started with a different Sarah Waters. Anyway, I would be really curious if you have read Sarah Waters, or like a different Sarah Waters book. I would love to hear what you thought. If you have read this one, I would love to hear what you thought of it as well. And let me know which Sarah Waters you think I should get to next, because I would definitely be interested enough in continuing to read her more. That is it for now. I'm glad I finally got around to discussing this book. I can't believe I forgot. But anyway, I will be back. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, happy reading.